As you probably heard in the first part of this video, my alternator is making a really horrible whining noise. Very likely the bearings are going out. If you ever want to know what a failing alternator sounds like, just go back to the beginning of this video and you'll see. So the other symptom of this is that the red battery light came on the dash, and that shows that the charging system is operating below the specification. So typically the alternator should be putting out about 14 volts in order to charge the battery, and if that's not happening, that red light will come on. This one is going back and forth. If I start it right now, you'll hear the noise, but the voltage is just on the very edge of the bottom of the range when I use my voltmeter. It's right at like 13.25 volts or something. So it's failing, and every now and then it'll just stop completely. So this video will be about two things. One is how to change out the alternator, which is on this particular engine one of the easier things to do because you don't have to remove a bunch of other pieces. But also, just because it's the right thing to do, we're also going to be changing out the serpentine belt. This particular belt has literally almost 200,000 miles on it, which is way above what it should have. You should be changing these belts at like 40 to 60,000 miles. So I did get a new belt. If your alternator is not putting out the right voltage and it's not making that noise, it could also be this tensioner right here. So that is what keeps tension on the belt. And a lot of times people will tell you that you should change that when you change the belt, because they can also get out of spec and not properly tension the belt. Or it could be the belt itself. So the belt could be worn, it could be loose. The worn is pretty easy to identify. You'll see frays in the belt itself, pieces of that kind of fabric coming off. You'll see cracks in the splines. If you look closely, this one doesn't have any cracks, but if you see a few cracks running this way, not really a big deal. If they're running along the spline though, that is a problem, so you'll need to replace the belt. Another symptom of a bad belt is if it's slapping. So if you are running the engine and you are looking at the belt, you'll see it actually wobbling a lot because it's loose. Now that could be the belt, could also be the tensioner. The belt is, 20 to 40 bucks. The tensioner is, somewhere around $80 in some cases, depending on where you buy it. So you could try a new belt first, and if that doesn't fix it, you could check the tensioner. So we'll do the belt first. Pretty easy. All that we really need to do is stick a 3/8 drive in this hole right here in the tensioner and put it on the same setting you would use in your 3/8 ratchet to loosen a bolt. We will turn that tensioner to loosen it up, and that will allow us to get the belt off of these splines. So I will be doing that first just to show you how that's done. And if you've watched any of my other videos, I always say your mileage may vary because these are free videos and you get what you pay for. You do not want to put your ratchet in the loosen. You want to put it in the tighten so that you can turn it this way, and you'll see, if this would focus, pushing that tensioner down. So I usually use a extension bar on my ratchet, just makes it a little bit easier. But you'll see as I push down, you'll see the slack in that belt, and then literally you just pull it off. One of the things I definitely recommend is that before you pull that belt off, you look and see how it was routed and write it down. As you can see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different pulleys to route around. It's pretty clear from the ribbing which ones get the bottom of the belt and then the flat ones get the top, but how you get it around is very confusing. So you've got your harmonic balancer down here, your idler pulley, your AC compressor, your alternator, which we'll be taking out, and your starter, and then the belt tensioner. So all of these are very important, obviously, for proper operation. So make sure that you write that down. It's very simple diagram to so you remember how to route that. So next, we're going to be actually taking out the alternator itself. I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is one of the easiest probably procedures on the car. So there's literally 4 bolts. This one here for the mounting bracket, the one at the other end of the mounting bracket just to loosen this up. There is a bolt down here, one on the other side that's similar. I can't really see it. And then you have the actual wiring harness, and then the hot lead that goes, back to the battery and everything. So pretty simple. I'll walk you through it, but it's not that hard. All right, so first thing we're going to do is completely take off this bolt, and then the one down here, and the one over here that's behind the pulley. This top bolt is a 13 millimeter, so is the one back here. You'll need potentially a deeper socket because this stud bolt here actually pops up through, so you may need a slightly deeper weld socket to get that done. So we'll take these off. The ones down here are 16 millimeter. So take that off, take that one off, and we'll be in business. Okay, next we will take this plastic cover off what's called the B connector, and we will also take off this wiring harness here. So we'll start with this one. This is also a 13 millimeter. Comes off pretty easily. And just remember, this is connected to the hot side of your battery. So if for some reason you forgot to disconnect the negative terminal and you let this thing flap around, you're going to be in for a nasty surprise. Just to be safe, even though I did disconnect the negative terminal, I'm going to let this get out of the way here. And then the last thing is to connect the actual wiring harness here. So like a lot of the harnesses, this is a safety harness. Let me get a better camera angle for you. So you will pull this red piece out and then push, which you probably can't see, but I'm pushing this way on here, pulling that off. All right, now that we got everything out of the way, we're going to go ahead and take the alternator out. So it's kind of hard to see on the camera, but this thing actually has 2 sides where that mounting bolt went through, and it kind of grips a mounting location on the engine block. So you can't just pull it straight out. You've got to lift it up, and you've got to wiggle back and forth to get it kind of unseated. You could also take a screwdriver or some other pry bar and gently push and get it moved in the right direction. Definitely don't want to damage it, you know, but that's it. So here's the new alternator. This is a pure energy remanufactured. As you can see, it's model number 11243. This is actually a 160 amp alternator. Different Jeeps come with different alternators. This one came factory at 140. If you're not sure which one yours is, you can actually check your VIN number and it will tell you which one yours came with. And there's no harm in upgrading, especially if you have additional electronics, you know, big driving lights, things that use up a lot of power, winches, things like that. No harm in moving up as long as you get the same, you know, model, you know, with the right mounting brackets and connectors and all that good stuff. So we're going to set this bad boy down in that cavity where we took the other one out and insert the bolts just to get it back in its place, and then we'll start tightening things down. And as usual, I'll give you all the torque specs for each bolt. Okay, a couple public service announcements. One, if you're trying to get leverage while you're either removing or installing the alternator, it's real easy to rest your arm on this guy right here. Please don't do that. This is your powertrain control module. It's basically the computer that runs everything. You obviously don't want to, you know, crack one of these connectors or anything like that. That would be really, really bad. So don't put any weight or force on this as you're, you know, maybe messing with that screwdriver down here or anything like that. The other one is that hopefully you paid attention when you remove these bottom bolts. One of these bolts, the one that I'm showing here, is only threaded at one end and is smooth the rest so it can get through that channel and then connect in the back. The one on the other side that you can't see is threaded all the way through. So hopefully you paid attention to that. So everything's been hand tightened at this point. Now for the actual torque specs. So for all of the mounting bolts and nuts, so this guy, the one behind, the one here on top that goes to the bracket, and the bracket in the back, these are all 40 foot-pounds, so not a ton of force. When you remount the B connector to the actual alternator, that nut is 110 inch-pounds. So make sure you don't over tighten that. It doesn't take a lot. So we're going to tighten all these bolts down. We will not be connecting this until after we do the drive belt. Not sure why. That's what the factory service manual recommends. So we'll leave that out of the picture until we get the belt reinstalled. Okay, so now we're going to put the belt back on. I've put it on there loosely, but just to give you an idea, I started over here with the starter motor, went around, and that's now sitting on top of the alternator. It goes straight down from the alternator down to the air conditioning compressor, around the air conditioning compressor, above this pulley, and then does an S immediately to the harmonic balancer, around the bottom of the harmonic balancer, and then back up over the idler, or over the tensioner. So the only one I haven't routed around is the idler. So what we're going to do is remove the tension by cranking the tensioner pulley down again, and then I'll be able to take this piece here, this upper piece here. So take this from the alternator straight around the idler pulley and back this way. And then we release the tension. and then you lose your flashlight. And that's it. That's all it takes to put the belt back in. As you can also see, the new belt that I chose is a Micro V model number K060900. And the next thing we will do is put the B plus wire back on to the alternator. This guy here. Just for reference, this is a 13mm bolt, and it will be tightened to 110 inch-pounds. Then we'll reconnect the connector down here, and we'll be ready to fire this thing back up after we connect the negative terminal back. Alright, so if you can ignore the horrible noise of my exhaust manifold leak, which will be in an upcoming video, you can see that the whine of the alternator is gone. Everything seems to be running well, and I am now putting out over 14.5 volts, which is right where it should be. Before this, that needle was down between 12 and 14. That's it. Hope this was helpful.